I'm going to tell you a little story today about something we're doing at our company that means a lot to me. But I'll rewind a few years and tell you where our story started, at least where this story started. And this story started on a lovely June day back in 2008 in Milton, Massachusetts. Just at the other side of that house, there's a lovely kind of a deck, and I was sitting out there having a beer with my then business partner in a company, or about to be business partner in a company that we were working with that I'd gone over to meet called IGNiTE. And he ran his business from the barn you see on the left behind that nice house. And IGNiTE made some very interesting and makes some very interesting scientific equipment, very high-end equipment. And they'd grown their business to about $1 million, maybe 5-8 years earlier, and they'd sort of plateaued at that point, and they were a little bit stuck. My business over here, Redbox, was selling their products, and I could see that they were stuck and they had a problem, and I'd gone over to meet with them and to sort of see if there was some way that we could help them get over the hump. They had good products, they had good people, but the problem was they were mad scientists. And like many mad scientists, they were very, very clever, but somewhat directionless. And it's not often you can say to people that you work with rocket scientists, but actually their head of engineering was a rocket scientist, so I couldn't go in there and say, well, it's not rocket science, because it was. Anyway, they were mad scientists, but they had the two core ingredients of every success: great people and a great product. They were missing the third P, people, product, and a plan. And I realized that's all they were missing, and actually it was quite a simple thing. So by the end of that week, or a few days that I spent with them, and over that beer, I agreed to buy 30% of that company. And I have to say, to this date, it was the most successful investment I ever made, and also the most fun journey. What we did was we took these nice people, crazy people, and we gave them a little bit of direction. We put some of them into sales and some of them into product development and some of them into manufacturing, where previously everybody had been doing everything in this crazy barn behind this building in Milton, Massachusetts. And it worked brilliantly. And unlike almost every plan, and I look out here and I know all of you have worked a million business plans over the years, and I'm sure you'll all be familiar with the notion that you put together a plan and you have lots of sort of elements in that plan. We're going to have the sales piece, we're going to have the marketing piece, the product development piece, the research piece, whatever it is, the finance piece. Everything we did in this plan worked. Everything. I was stunned. Never happened to me before in my life. It was just sort of a happy coincidence. And within a year or two, we were making a ton of money. We'd raised everybody's wages because they hadn't had a pay rise in years. We were taking healthy dividends from the business, and it was double the size it had been before after being flat for 5 years. It was a fantastic success story until 2011. And unfortunately, everything started to go south. Now, what happened in 2011 was, well, we made scientific instruments used in a particular area of research that's almost entirely publicly funded. In America, most of the funding comes from the National Institute of Health, which is basically federal funding. And as some of you may be aware, for a number of years, particularly in the middle of the recession, the Americans had problems agreeing a budget internally. And one of the things that got completely destroyed was the budget for research. Unlike Europe, where if one country shuts down, at least the others are still funding research. When the NIH says they're not funding capital projects in America, it's one big tap that gets switched off, and that's what happened to us. So sales dried up in the US. Fortunately, our European business, which had grown by then, and our Chinese business was helping to carry things, but we were still in trouble. Our biggest overhead was staff, like it is in most of our companies. And we were faced with a very, very, very uncomfortable decision to make. The only way we could save money, and we needed to do it, and we needed to do it quickly, was to either cut people or to do an across-the-board salary cut. Our preference was to do that because we knew that this tap that had been turned off was going to get turned back on again. So we talked to the staff. We very sort of apprehensively went to them and said, look, guys, we're going to need about a 10% pay cut across the board. We know this is difficult, but if we don't do this, we're going to have to let people go. We made promises to the staff. First thing we said was the pay cut we're asking you to take, we'll take. Second promise we made them is that we wouldn't take dividends until we'd restored all their salaries back to market levels. I have to say, these people weren't underpaid. They were paid a market rate. It wasn't like they couldn't get other jobs. There were plenty of tech jobs around. It was only our little industry that was suffering. But they all agreed to take the pain. I was quite surprised. There were no dissenting voices. Nobody wanted to see anybody let go. But of course we worried about morale, and we worried about were people nodding and secretly on monster.com looking for other jobs like rats sort of getting ready to flee the sinking ship. Fortunately, it didn't happen. We turned the ship around within 6 or 9 months with everybody's salaries restored. Within a year, we were paying healthy dividends again, and the company was running very well and growing again. So it was a lovely turnaround, and it was a great thing to be involved in. And we learned some things from the experience. I think we learned 3 things, very important things that have stuck with me. The first is share the bad news as well as the good. It's so easy to always be telling the staff the positive things, but the truth is, if there are problems in an organization, if you don't share them, the staff will normally get some inkling that there's something bad going on. And in fact, the rumor mill usually ends up being worse than any factual information you could give them. The second thing we learned was that people want to do good. If you explain to them what the problem is, even if it hurts them personally, if it's at all within their power and they recognize the rationale, they will work with you to do the right thing. And the third thing we learned is that when you get a group of people together trying to solve a problem, it's a thing of beauty. And I have to say, to see that ship righted, turned around and moving forward again was one of the happiest periods of my life. It also got us thinking about something else. Myself and the other owners, by then we'd merged this company that we bought 30% of in with our existing company in Ireland and formed a small group. I had been thinking for a while about what exit might look like eventually, 10, 20 years away. And we got thinking, we've got all these very high-end people working very hard, knowledge workers, who are all ready to put their shoulder to the wheel. Why not consider selling to them eventually? And we thought, well, what would that look like? Well, when we thought about it, we realized that the real problem with selling to employees, if you don't have a very high-end management group, and we're still a small company and people have come up from the bottom, is that they don't think like business owners. So we said the challenge isn't just to think about selling to them. The challenge is to create a company of business owners. And in 2014, we started our GRS scheme. GRS stands for Get Rich Slowly. We weren't interested in anybody who was looking for a fast buck or a quick killing. We wanted people who wanted to stay in our organization for the long term. So we set about educating our staff as well as getting them involved as owners. And our scheme basically has 3 elements to it. Firstly, open book management. What we do is we now have a policy of sharing all information with all employees in our company, unless there is an overarching rationale for keeping it secret within the management team. So we share everything. Every month we meet, the divisions meet, and then the group meets. We do it by video conference because we have people now in the Netherlands, in Ireland, and in Boston. And we share the P&L of the company, and we share forecasts going forward for the next 3 months. And everybody in the company contributes to those forecasts. So they sit together in huddles coming up to that meeting, and they forecast the cost centres and the income centres going forward. We have a plan, of course, for the year. We don't like the word budgets. Budgets are these magical things that sit out there and that management impose upon people and say you're going to be fired if they don't work. We have plans that we work with the team, but we accept that the world changes around us. So on a shorter term basis, we then forecast with more actual knowledge. So we sit together as a group, we forecast out the next 3 months, and we talk about the issues that go on. Now, it's quite a big thing, but it's quite a well-constrained thing. We don't spend days doing this every month. Our monthly meetings take about 20 minutes to a half an hour on a very long month, but everybody prepares beforehand. The second thing is then we couple that open book management with rewards, and there are short-term rewards and long-term rewards. The short-term rewards are basically a bonus. But rather than bonusing people just on the work they do, we now bonus people on the team goal like we would with owners. So usually our bonus is based on profit, some profit growth that year, because we all think about profit as business owners. And then the long-term rewards are every year we get our business valued externally by our auditors. And every year in which we grow the value of our business, we share 30% of that growth as employee shares that are distributed to all the staff in the company, not just to management, to everybody, the whole way down in proportion to their salaries. Now, along this journey, and it took a few years to the beginning of 2014, I got accused of something. I got accused by a really good friend of mine who owns a substantial business here in Dublin. I got accused by a friend of mine who works in a university he'd think would be a bit left-wing anyway. I got accused by some of the people at our consulting firms and lawyers of being a communist. We're not communists, and I'm glad to report to EO that, or at least ask that my membership won't be revoked. What we're trying to do is create a company of capitalists. We're trying to get employees to stop just thinking about taking the paycheck every week or every month and start thinking about being owners of a business and what that looks like. Has it been a success or a failure? Well, it's a bit early to say. I think on the financial front, we'll have to tune back in 10 years or 15 years to see whether our little game has resulted in making the original owners very, very wealthy and giving them a suitable exit. On the managerial front, I can't say the jury is in. I've often thought that two of the core components of senior management are leadership and policing. Last year, shortly after we introduced our program, I had a difficult period in my personal life. A few of you here know about it. My wife was taken very, very seriously ill, almost died, and for a period of time, I became a long period of time, I became essentially a part-time CEO. I had to go in, take care of my kids, deal with some of the home stuff, give my wife some attention, do all of that. And the one thing I realized any day I came back into the office was my function as a policeman within my business had completely disappeared. It was no longer necessary because people were policing themselves. When you go into an open book management meeting and things haven't been done, you don't need managers to tell people. If they were previously agreed, their colleagues tell them. No one wants to pick up a colleague's work. You don't have absenteeism in a culture like that. So I can say that managerially life has improved. That's not to say the function of leadership has gone away. That one is still very much there, and plans have to be made and implemented, but the function of policing is gone. So we think that, at least in a little way, our journey is already bringing us towards an interesting destination. Thank you very much.